We'd like to now move into the fifth session for the day, a leaders' discussion on the topic Deconstructing and Rebuilding People Policies. While our current ways of working are being relooked at, workplaces are being rebuilt to fit the need for the new work environment. It is also imperative that time is spent on more holistic changes, including employee benefits, policies, and engagements. After all, people are the competitive advantage for any company today. Our speakers for this session are, and I'd like to invite them on stage, please give them a big round of applause. Suman Gopalan, CHRO Freshworks. Suman is responsible for leading the overall talent strategy for Freshworks and oversees all aspects of HR, including talent acquisition, talent development, total rewards, employee experience, and workplace experience. Joining Suman is Pranali Save, CHRO ICertis. Pranali, I beg your pardon. Pranali is an expert in enabling leaders to craft such an agenda and integrating talent and business strategy seamlessly to achieve the needed business outcomes. And chairing this session is Sangeeta Gupta, Senior Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer, NASSCOM. Please give them a big round of applause. And I'd like to hand the mic over to Sangeeta. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Justin, and what a fabulous morning we've had. Thank you all for being a great audience. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to chair this session with the two phenomenal HR leaders who also represent India's new age companies. Most of you would know about Freshworks and the phenomenal IPO that they had on NASDAQ. And ICertis is another leading SaaS company that's been, I don't know, valued at how many $1 billion, so I'm not going to get into all of that. But I think the idea of this session is really to also learn from these new age companies. How are they thinking about people practices? We've heard from a number of services companies, GCC leaders, and really the idea is to get their insights on how are they thinking about talent and what can we learn from them. So thank you so much, Suman and Pranali, for joining this session. An interesting quote I read recently was that if 2020 and 2021 was about unplanned reinvention, 2022 is about intentionality, right? So tell me as leaders, what have been your learnings over these last 2 years, and what is your intentionality to implement them and how you're going about it? So Suman, if we can start with you.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having us. It's wonderful to be back in in-person events. And we'll talk a lot about the learnings we've had, but the biggest learning is nothing can beat social interaction in person. So thank you for that. Like you rightly said, Sangeeta, it has been a huge amount of learning for companies, businesses, as well as HR professionals. I think when we went into the whole pandemic, none of us really knew what to expect. I think we're still defining what the future is going to look like. I don't think we are certain. But I think there are good and bad outcomes of that. The first thing I'd say, I'd look at the positives, right? The biggest positive is I think it is proven to us that you can have a different way of working that can be a lot more inclusive, right? I think all of us were experimenting in bits and pieces on how do we enable remote work, how do we enable flexibility, especially when a large number of people wanted that. I think the pandemic disproved the theory that you've got to be in an office to be productive, right? I think that's the biggest aha moment that all of us have had is you can, with the help of technology, tools, all of that, really be productive from wherever you are. I think the harder part of all of this that we are all still learning to do, the technology is easier to solve. I think the human connection and bonding cannot be replaced by technology. And so as we all come back to work and we have a desire to stay flexible, stay remote, all of that, I think the biggest question for all of us is how do you scale culture of your company when you're not going to experience that in person? Right? People are not going to meet each other. That bonding that happens, the joy of the workplace, getting to know co-workers and really having that familial relationship typically gets lost if it happens over a video call all the time. That's the biggest piece I think we're all trying to figure out how to crack the code on. So lots of good things, but I think lots still for us to figure out how we move forward.
No, very well said, Suman, that I think how do you work with inclusion at the heart of it is something that the pandemic has taught us, yet you cannot think that it's all about remote work. I think the importance of meeting social connections, bonding, culture, values, purpose, all of that is central to what people practices will be going forward. Pranali, what about you? ICertis is, again, a very fast-growing company. How have the last 2 years been for you and learnings for you?
Thanks, Sangeeta. And as you rightly said, the first 2 years were about learning as we fell into different situations. So a lot of experimentation happened, a lot of failing happened, and subsequently we learned. But I think the biggest takeaway for us has been that when we started the pandemic, employees and people everywhere learned to value different things. They learned to make different choices, which didn't happen earlier. Earlier, it was, your work was your purpose, but across the 2 years, it became a means to something else. And as a takeaway from that, I think if you look at intentionality, which is what your question started with, it's about learning now to make that pivot to designing together. So it's more about co-creation. And it is really redesigning, reimagining for flexibility, for digital dexterity, for offering a choice. So I think we are acknowledging that it is by far an employee-driven world now. And rather than fight against it, I think if you just join hands and you learn to do things together, that's what my takeaway is.
No. Well said, Pranali. And both Pranali and Suman are very happy to be in an in-person event, and they said the best value for their time is to really answer as many questions as all of you may have. So I'll ask a couple of questions, but in the meantime, I'd request you to think through what questions you may have, and we'd like to make this session as engaging and as interactive as possible. So Pranali, coming back to you, the theme for this session is about people practices, right? And in the morning, we spend a lot of time talking about making hybrid work. A lot of energy and attention always gets to this return to workplace. But people practices are definitely beyond return to workplace. How are you thinking about people practices in this new, evolving, experimental world that we are in?
So we are, like all of us sitting here, also revisiting policies, practices, turn by turn, to see how they need to be reimagined in this new world. But if I were to pick something, I think one of the things which is very important for us at ICertis is how do we look at inclusivity in this new world? So far we've talked about things like gender and PWD and how do you navigate all that. But I think the pandemic and the whole hybrid model has created a new set of haves and have-nots. Those who have access to the office or those who can come physically in, those who cannot. And I think leaders also, there is an unconscious bias, a new kind that creeps in about, making assumptions based on can you come in, can you not. There are other factors that also come in when it's a remote setup about, like, we have someone who has a speech impairment and who basically functions by lip reading. How does that person work when you can't switch on a video? So those kind of things are what we are looking at rather than, just pick on a people practice particularly. Other things, I think even the unit, when you looked at an employee in the past, it was one person, somebody who basically came into the office. It's one individual that you sort of designed your policies around. I think that unit has changed. It's now families, it's pets, it's communities. So that is something else we're looking at while designing our benefits, for example. So how does this apply to the entire family? Or our engagement models? How do you tune it to what that person is interested in as opposed to a one-size-fits-all for everybody? So these are two things, and if I were to call out a third, it's also trying to take the decision-making down to a team and a managerial level. So, not centralized anymore, but breaking things down, customizing it for smaller units, if not for individuals.
No. Great points that how do you drive true inclusion? How do you personalize policies? How do you build not a one-size-fits-all? But Suman, coming back to you, I think you would have seen phenomenal growth as a company, in the last 2 years since the listing. Employees are coming in with a different set of expectations from where Freshworks was founded. And as you've grown from today being a 5,000 people company, how are you thinking about people practices? Is it a very similar to a large company setup, or is it still a different startup flavor there?
When we started Freshworks, right, the core philosophy, we never called it fancy words like culture and all of that, but we called it first principles. And one of the first principles that we had was we wanted to create a company that people actually love working for. So even today, one of the culture codes that we have in our values is creating a happy work environment. Right? That's fundamental to how we operate, how we make decisions, all of that. Now, as you grow from being a startup to a scale-up to a public company, all of us over here know that you've got to scale your practice, you've got to scale your process, all of that. But oftentimes what happens is, and we're true to that as well, is a lot of this is done with an internal lens. Which means that, when I want to scale onboarding, when I want to scale hiring, it's done with, my functions viewpoint. But one of the things we're trying to change is to say, let's put happy work environment at the core of it, which then means that you design everything with the end employee or the end user in mind. And so when you put that lens on it, you quickly realize that there is actually no single policy or framework or way of operation that fits everybody. Simple example, when you onboard somebody, right? Great practice would be onboard 100% of the folks, everybody comes in, you have a wonderful onboarding session, but then you realize that from an end user standpoint, the needs are very different. We hire a large number of fresh graduates. Their needs are more in terms of assimilating from a campus to a corporate. Experienced leaders need it differently. And so we quickly realized that designing policy is not really our forte. It is something that you need to co-create with employees. And so our focus currently is all around employee experience and how do you co-create this experience from the time they interview with the company to when they onboard to the career experiences you provide to, of course, even when they leave. We have a very strong Freshworks alumni that continue to be a part of our family as well. And so it's really, what should I say, rethinking the world of policies and procedures in HR and literally like how businesses apply the concept of customer experience. I think the same lens you need to apply with employee experience. Because today's profile of employees is nothing called career for life. I think people really want to have great experiences in their career. And our role is all about how do you bring those to life and how do you create moments of delight for your employees. And I think that's the biggest thing that can hold people together, right? Otherwise, compensation or anything else, anybody else can create it. So that's our biggest focus. Our aim is to provide our employees with the best experience of their career and create moments of delight for them, just the way we promise for our customers.
Yeah. I think I've never heard so many conversations about employee experience, so many research reports getting published about how important employee experience is becoming integral to the whole entire talent management strategy. If we have any questions, we can open the floor. If not, I have a lot of questions. Can we start with the lady here? If you can keep it brief, we'd like to keep to as many questions as we can.
Myself, Ramya, I'm the Chief Performance and Happiness Manager of Safe Software. And I have a question that, what are the challenges you faced during the work from home option and now with the hybrid setup? So what you missed it and the employees missing the same hybrid situation?
Sorry, so the question is that as we migrate from remote to hybrid,
remote to hybrid,
what are employees missing and what are employers
missing?
Employee missing.
Yeah.
Pranali, you want to take, or Suman, you want to take
that? Good. This is what our employees tell us, right? When we moved into the work from home mode, I think employees really enjoyed the flexibility. They enjoyed, having, flexibility in terms of how they manage their day, all of that. But very quickly, I think employees also started missing the social connection. And so when we opened offices and it was safe to open, we never really mandated folks to come back, but we saw a large number of folks coming back because they were missing the joy of the workplace. And that's the biggest thing I will tell you, is when you go into, working fully remote, what we're hearing from employees is, the laughter that happens in the hallways, the impromptu, sessions they have with their colleagues, the events that happen in the office. It breaks the monotony that happens in work otherwise. And we've tried to do a lot of things to even break the monotony when we were fully remote, right? We had online DJs, we had online exercise sessions, we did all of that. But somewhere you got to sustain it, otherwise our employees were finding it increasingly hard to maintain balance. What we were seeing was hyper-productivity. People were getting burnt out because there's no start, there's no stop. People just work throughout the day. I think that's the part that I'm hearing the most from employees, that they're missing, that connection, that fun and joy of the workplace that really speaks to the emotional part of work. Otherwise, it's mostly just the logical part of work that comes to the fore. Pranali, you want to add on?
I agree completely, Suman, and there's one more thing I could add, which is, it came to me as a surprise, but folks said that they missed the routine. So, when you're in a routine, you hate it, right? 9 o'clock, I have to be at work, it's my commute, then I'm back. But strangely enough, people said, I miss that boring routine that I had, because it sort of allowed me, and especially those who went through some kind of personal stress, or people had all kinds of things going on. And they said, I love to have that because I could just get in and out at a certain time. So to your point on the burnout, I think that was maybe coming from there.
Yeah, I think making office exciting is what we all need to work on and drive that messaging. Please, sir.
My question is in the same line of thought. I look at office, of course, office building itself is a physical space, right? And it has, other than the social and within the community, within the company, I think a lot more companies come together, a lot more amenities are available. And how do you think we can make that experience better? Are there crucial points which you guys did notice along the way? How office buildings are a unique experience and bringing them, like amplifying it, and probably in terms of events, or something like a gym or a sports center, how does that enable employees?
So I think if I was to rephrase the question, what is this new office for the hybrid work environment that you are envisaging, which will draw your employees back to the workplace?
I think the biggest thing, more than the physical facility, is co-workers, right? When we had people coming into the office, we have all of that. We have the gym, we have a fabulous, dining and catering. We have all of that. That was there even before the pandemic. The biggest draw was when people started coming in. They were so happy. They started posting on LinkedIn and all the social. So people had FOMO. And so we saw a lot of folks coming in wanting to enjoy that experience, right? That's the joy part of it. But coming back to how do we make it productive, right? Remember, it's not the same. There is still going to be a part of our workforce who will be remote, right? Not 100% are going to come in, and I don't think we should plan for that. We should plan for flexibility because it allows a lot more employees to actually be a part of your organization when you give that choice as well. But you have to make sure that people have the same experience. It's very easy to actually visualize and create experiences in a physical workplace. But how do you experience your company when you're not there physically? Right? You're operating from Gurgaon or Pune and you don't come into the office. What is the experience that you provide to that employee? That's the part we need to be thoughtful about. Right? So one of the things we did was, because we talk so much about happy workplace, we enabled all our employees, even if they're remote, to create their own happy workplace, right? Which is to make sure that you have similar, jazzy workspace at home, whether you need a nice monitor, desk, whatever, create it. So we gave that ability for them to create that workspace. But also the bigger thing is when you are collaborating at work, we all are used to collaborating face to face. Comes very naturally, right? But when it's hybrid, part of the folks are on a video call, part of them are in the office. How do you create an environment where the others don't feel left out? I think those are the parts that we are trying to create in our physical work environment, making sure that we have the technology that makes it inclusive for them, right? I think that you have to be a lot more thoughtful about so that everybody has similar experience with collaboration, meeting space, all of that. But the biggest thing I'll tell you is as people are coming back to the workplace, you need to actually create ways in which you make it easier for them to come in as well, make them feel safe. And I'll tell you for the most part, as people start coming in, as leaders start coming in, people experience that camaraderie and the joy of coming back. But you just have to make sure that you're not catering to one set of people, but everybody who is not even in a physical work environment feels that same connection and joy in being part of your company. That answer.
Do you have any?
Well, we started redesigning our office spaces because we said that if we are saying work from anywhere, that's the mantra that we are using. So if you can work from anywhere, then what do you use an office for? It needs to be something different. So we've designed our office, and not the entire office has been changed yet. We're doing it space by space. So we've redesigned it as an open space for congregation, celebration, and collaboration. We don't say, come here to work. So it's like the whole model that we had when we gave the brief was Lego. So it's like Lego blocks. So, the entire space is movable, barring a few cabins which needed to be soundproofs, few meeting rooms, but otherwise it's all movable. So teams come in, sometimes they have a party, sometimes it's a proper meeting, sometimes some people want to come and do some focus work. So all kinds of arrangements are possible, and that's how they use it. So perhaps that answers.
Interesting concept. We have anyone on this side? We've been just going that side, so we'll take some questions on this side, please.
Suman, my question is towards you regarding...
You can stand up, please. We can't see you.
Suman, so my question is towards you regarding employee experience. HR technology on the whole is inevitable. It's here, it's going to be here. And scaling a company without HR tech is almost impossible. So how do you balance the fact that technology is such an inevitable part, and how do you retain the human touch when you are expanding, you're scaling up your business, you're looking at profit margins, but you also want to maintain the employee experience and maintain the human touch?
Pranali, you want to go? The question is really about leveraging HR technologies and yet retaining the human touch. But
yeah, I think he addressed it to Suman.
Okay, sorry, Suman.
Sure, I think we both can have a go at it. I honestly am super excited about technology in the field of HR. I think it is long overdue for us to bring in technology that can actually enable us to delight our employees a lot more, right? Because otherwise, for far too long, I think we've relied on manual processes that A, don't scale, and two, don't allow you to provide uniform experience to everybody, right? A lot of the non-value-add work can be done using technology. But that's not the only goal. Today, if you think about it, there is so much of amazingly innovative technology in the field of HR tech. Think about candidate relationship management. Just one example at the beginning of your employee experience, right? We get anywhere between 50,000 to 85,000 applicants in a year, new applicants, right? And sometimes I really struggle in terms of how to provide that personalized experience to so many. Because so many people are interested in applying to you, they want to join your company, and sometimes it becomes really hard to scale. But you have amazing technology today. If you think about just how you manage your business using a CRM, you can do that with candidate relationship management. right? And you can make sure that you are engaging with your talent pool, keeping them warm. You are able to really figure out who are the ones you want to shortlist. You can do so much more with technology. And I think it is the right time for us to really focus on the field of technology for HR. But it shouldn't be technology for technology's sake, right? They all should come together to provide a seamless experience. Otherwise, it's clunky, right? You just hop from one experience to the other. Everything, you think about onboarding, such a fabulous experience you can give to your employees when you can automate the communication that goes out and personalize it as well. Otherwise, somebody needs to physically send it out, all of that is just not scalable. Think about, the career experience that they have. Earlier, we used to have these, not earlier, even today we have IJPs, right? And somebody needs to manually run that program. Today, you can have technology that you can use to run an internal talent marketplace, right? Think about how you manage your alumni network. Of course, your core technology, your HCM and all of that has always been there. But technology can really enable you to elevate employee experience and create the kind of personalized experience that you want to give. Think about it, all of us use technology in our personal lives, right? At least, think about it, ordering groceries, food, your banking, all of the stuff that, was, stuff that I didn't enjoy doing. Today, technology is so wonderful, and you'd run your entire life on a phone. And then you come to the workplace, and you figure out that everything is so, archaic, it's clunky. So that's my point, that technology can really enable you to create fabulous moments of delight for your employees. And I think we just need to make sure that we are accelerating the innovativeness of HR technology and using them wisely to do this at scale.
Yeah, can you get the next question?
Savita from Allstate India GCC. My question is, how is the role of a manager is going to evolve in hybrid model? I mean, why this question? Because when we moved from traditional ways of doing, waterfall, iterative to agile, expectation was, okay, so there is no command and control, so you got to be a servant leader, right? And now through the pandemic, we have made sure that, the work gets delivered, seamlessly. But there are a lot of issues around sense of belongingness to the organization, to the team, right? And so we were also trying to understand what is that, employees are expecting out of manager role. So we understood, they're expecting managers to be more empathetic, play a role of a coach, motivate them, inspire them, connect with them, right? So how is this manager role is going to evolve in hybrid? So, and what are managers are going to upskill? I think work front will continue to go seamlessly, but human, elements perspective, what are the areas that where managers have to really upskill themselves?
So definitely the role has changed. So as remote and hybrid become ways of life, I think increasingly for that particular team, the organization is seen through the lens of the manager. So how do we help our managers to really look at the soft skills? You talked about empathy, and that's really a big ask right now. But many more things. How do they make sure that the culture is experienced? Different other aspects are addressed. It's not so much about supervision of the work parts anymore. That can't happen. So the traditional bits of, do I see you working? How do I do that? That doesn't work. How do they find newer ways to help new team members to the, what we call the OJT or shadowing? How do you enable that in a hybrid format? Those are the questions that they need to address and answer, and that's what the role is coming to. And one more point I'll bring up, even the whole reward and recognition piece is changing so much. Because previously the manager was really the central person, on recognition, but now you really can't see what's happening beyond the, immediate work. So how do you get in other things like peer contributions towards these? So all of this, I would say, is changing. And to Suman's earlier point on technology, that is also what managers need to use more of now to help them to play out their roles.
Yeah. I think we'll just take the last question. We are out of time. We'll go to the gentleman here.
Hi, ma'am.
Sorry, somebody else has the mic, so yeah.
Yeah, so myself, Anand, portfolio managers from Expeditus Logistics. So this discussion had a lot of emphasis on collaboration, people, emotions, right? So what, according to you, are the top 3 parameters in terms of employee evaluation, employee value proposition, and how that got changed after pandemic today?
So what are your top 3 evaluations for employee value proposition, and how has that changed in the pandemic?
So maybe I'll start, and Suman, you can continue. So for us, when we look at the new EVP, it's all about how do we ensure flexibility, how do we ensure customization, and most important is how do we align to the purpose. Because as was said in the beginning, it's not now about choosing lifelong careers. It's not about the career being the end, but it's the means to something else. So our attempt right now is we're focusing a lot on what is the purpose and how does the organization help you fulfill that, as opposed to the other way around. How do you align the organizational purpose with each individual employee, each individual ICertis's purpose? So we're doing things towards that. I can just take one example in the interest of time is we introduced in our leave policy 7 extra days, which we call 7 days for humanity. So any employee can take that to work towards any cause that matters to them. So, there are some fine print like it can't be religious or political, but things like that. We're running purpose workshops. So this is our attempt that you don't need to go somewhere else to do those things. You can do that staying within the organization. That's really the value proposition we have.
I'd probably answer that slightly differently. Today, when you think about it, everybody has a choice to go out and, they'll probably get 5 other opportunities, right? Most people. You see that opportunities are plenty. The biggest thing that organizations need to do is to think about why should somebody work for you, right? And it has to go beyond compensation. It has to go beyond benefits and the obvious set of rewards, because anybody can give that. I think the past few months have really proven that compensation is no longer the only thing you should compete on. I think the biggest thing that you should, or all organizations should think about, is what is our value proposition that goes beyond the components of compensation that we provide, right? You need to give people a reason to stay in your company that goes beyond your stock price or your cash rewards that you give. And most often, people need to enjoy what they do. And if you find people who are passionate about what they do, if you find people who are passionate about your company, I think that is really how you create magic. And I think it's really incumbent for all of us to think about what is our unique value proposition, what should be the kind of culture that we stand for, and how do you make sure that you hire people who add to that culture? And over time, everything else will sort itself out, comp and everything will. So that's what I would leave you with. And for us, as we have tried to, quote unquote, reinvent, we've not really reinvented our culture. What we've really learned is to add to our culture in the new normal, which is how do you create happy work environment when the workplace has changed? How do you create a happy work environment when you don't, see people face to face? I think your value proposition and your culture is something that is in your DNA. How that comes to fore in the new normal, in the new future of work, I think that is the biggest thing you need to stay true to. Everything else will come and go. Everything else somebody can, replicate. But what will be uniquely yours is your culture, the value system, and how you operate as a company that goes beyond everything else and gives people a reason to stay with you.
Thank you so much, Suman and Pranali, for these very great ideas and thoughts. I know we had tons of other questions, but we have a time bar. So thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Please give them a big round of applause. We'd like to thank the panel members for that brilliant session.